We are live on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Rival Fantasy. Go to rivalfantasy.com or get the Rival Fantasy app. Today is Sunday, May 28th. I'm Drew Silva. With me here is Ryan Boyer. On this episode, we're going to cover some individual risers and fallers from the weekend, players who showed something encouraging, others who did not, and then we'll talk about some FAAB waiver-wire targets to round things out here on Sunday afternoon. First, let's jump into some headlines from Saturday. What's the lead story? Probably Tyler Glasnow. Like some good and bad against the Dodgers, but generally I think looked pretty darn sharp.
Yeah, it was Tyler Glasnow day, finally. We don't get as many of those as we'd like.
Yeah.
Of course, missed most of last season, a good chunk of the year before that, recovering from Tommy John surgery. Made a kind of a late season return last year from that. Strained his oblique during spring training. I guess it was on the severe side, but also the Rays, I think, they generally are pretty cautious with that stuff. But also, I mean, we knew that because of the Tommy John, his innings were going to be limited this year regardless. So I think it made sense to kind of slow play that. Look great on his rehab assignment. I agree for the most part. Kind of a mixed bag against the Dodgers, but overall pretty encouraging. Did give up 3 runs in 4 and 2/3 innings. Also had 8 strikeouts, just
Right.
1 walk, and he had, I believe, 17 swinging strikes on like 83 pitches, something like that. And just the usual stuff that almost always applies to a Tyler Glasnow start applies. Like you watch him and the stuff is just can be overwhelming. I think you're probably in agreement with me that it's almost all about health with him.
Sure.
There are some, as I kind of alluded to, some baked in workload questions, beyond just staying healthy. He's never
The
really,
Rays use him and stuff, and yeah.
and how much he pitched or didn't pitch last year and really his whole career. How often is he going to be able to go deep into games? Probably not a ton, but it's almost all about just staying healthy. Hopefully he can, at the very least, avoid arm injuries, because I think when he's on the mound, he's going to be a fantasy ace. I have very few, if any, questions about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think the analysis runs too deep here. Like if he's healthy and taking turns in the Rays rotation, you're plugging him in every time out,
Yeah.
and not really worrying about it. I guess maybe like once if we like have a stretch of starts to evaluate more than that, maybe we can say something more interesting on him. But yeah, it all really just comes down to if he's healthy, you're playing him. Eloy Jimenez is back with the White Sox on Sunday after missing nearly a full month following an emergency appendectomy. Starting in right field, batting second in Chicago's series finale at Detroit. Jimenez was off to a pretty slow start this year before the injury. 258 average, 743 OPS, 4 homers, 15 RBIs through 25 games. Didn't have a great rehab assignment either. It was only 12 plate appearances, I believe, with their Double-A affiliate. But he was just kind of starting to heat up, though, prior to the IL stint. Had a nice stretch to close out April, a good first week of May, and then appendicitis suddenly sets in. I would figure that Eloy is going to offer the expected level of power production the rest of the way. It's been a bad start to the season, obviously, overall for the White Sox. They've played a little bit better lately. And in that American League Central, really anyone is still alive. Not the Royals. I think we can count them out. But like the White Sox,
Yeah.
I looked at what are they? Only 6 games back of first place, despite being 22 and 32, 10 games under the 500 mark. The division leading Twins are only 2 games above 500. So I know there's been talk of like a deadline sell-off on the south side, and that it might even start much earlier than the deadline. Some pitching pieces that would be attractive to other teams, obviously, but you've got Jimenez back, Liam Hendricks on the verge of joining the bullpen. It sounds like, did they make that move on Sunday? I know he's like through live batting practice on Friday and drew like rave reviews, but they're kind of. I know he had a bad rehab assignment. That do you have an update on that?
No, I think I probably saw the last update that you did. I mean, he's been trending up the guy is coming back from cancer, so understandable. It's taken him a while to get sharp again, to get that velocity back. It sounds like it's back though, and it's just imminent.
I don't think he's going to go back on a rehab. Like I think they're just going to activate him once he's traveling with the team. I think Hendricks is coming back. If it doesn't happen on Sunday and we just missed it, it'll happen early next week. Michael Kopech's been on a dominant run. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. This team could still do some things, and Jimenez could be a key cog in that. There've been a lot of stops and starts throughout his career, a lot of injuries. That's mostly what it's been about. But in his career, he's averaged 36 home runs and 107 RBIs for every 162 games played. You just wish he'd actually play not even 162 games. Give us 100. The only time he's done that is played more than 100 games was his rookie year in 2019. Man, I guess it's kind of like a Glasnow situation. If he's healthy, you want him in your fantasy lineup because he has that raw power and usually hits in a good lineup spot with the White Sox and can drive in a lot of runs. Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. It's similar to Glasnow. I think probably we don't have quite as assurance that he's going to be elite level production when healthy. He has been a little up and down, but I mean, he's, like you mentioned, the power's outstanding. He doesn't strike out that much for a power hitter. It's going to be interesting to see what the White Sox do with their lineup. Jake Berger has started to cool off a little bit. CBC's Jake Berger.
Yeah, that's right. Shout out.
So they talked about playing him at second base. I don't know if that's going to be feasible. I mean, they put Jimenez in the outfield first game back. I kind of think it might make more sense to put Berger out there just because they would feel less worried about him getting hurt. But I don't know. Maybe they're going to stick Berger in the DH spot. Play Jimenez a little more in the
Berger
outfield.
Playing some second base too.
Elvis Andrus.
I don't know if that's ideal, but I feel like they should.
In a shift restriction world, it seems definitely less ideal. They probably could have gotten away with it back when you could play Mike Moustakas at second base, but it's less of a possibility now. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the White Sox do. I mean, they got to get guys like Tim Anderson going. Anderson doesn't have a home run yet. He's just looks completely lost. He's been mentioned as a lot of people mention him as a Dodgers trade target, but I mean, he's got to start hitting before he's going to be more attractive in that regard.
Everyone's been wanting to trade White Sox players. I don't know but they're very much alive. And if you look across that division, they're just as talented as the Twins are. Just
that was the case last year too, though, and they were just also terrible. So I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of a weird, there's talent on the roster for sure, but it's just kind of a weird roster construction. I don't know. We'll see. They certainly, on paper, they are still in it. That division is up for grabs, both central divisions. Another guy, sounds like he's going to play one more rehab game and then return on Tuesday, is Jesus Sanchez with the Marlins. He went down with a hamstring injury a couple weeks ago. He had been really one of the hottest hitters in baseball. He didn't play much at all at the beginning of the season. So it's kind of hard to get an accurate gauge about how he's really performed. But over the last 40-ish plate appearances prior to getting hurt, he had an 1100 OPS, something like that, 3 home runs. Stolen 3 bases already. I don't know if you can count on much of that, but he's a guy that's always had just light tower power. Like when he hits home runs, I think a couple of years ago speaking of home runs, I think Alec Burleson hit a home run. Got the
Yeah, I
Cardinals
just saw
game
that.
going on right as
We
I'm
both do.
podcasting, multitaskers. Um, yeah, Sanchez, I was it a couple years ago. Like he averaged like something crazy, like his home runs averaged like 430 plus feet or something like that. Like
He's
the
one of those
power's
like the
legitimate.
Marlins have had these like outfield prospects. We like waiting for one of them to actually like
Yeah.
become a sustainable producer. Brian De La Cruz, JJ
Hmm.
Bleday, who's now with the A's. Like there's been this they've needed for a couple of these guys to hit, and at least Sanchez has shown sparks that he could kind of be that.
Yeah.
Brian De La Cruz has shown that this year a little bit too as well.
Yeah. I mean, Sanchez is. I still worry about the contact ability. I think he's just naturally going to be a streaky hitter, but I mean, he could very easily hit, 30 plus home runs. He just might bat 230. Avisail Garcia is also in the mix there in Miami. He's going to be, I think, beginning a rehab assignment this week, if I remember correctly. So I don't know what they're going to actually do with that outfield situation. Jazz Chisholm's still hurt. Sanchez can play all three outfield spots if needed. So I mean, I think he's, especially how he was hitting prior to going on the IL, I think he's going to definitely get some run again, at least against right-handed pitching. So probably worth a stash in 5 outfielder leagues if he's still available, because he can be kind of that lightning in a bottle guy.
Speaking of the Cardinals, and there's a go-ahead homer from Andrew Kisner, who I didn't know he could hit home runs.
You must
But
you
they
must
have
be ahead
a
of me in the stream because he's still standing at the plate. Oh, there it goes.
spoiler alert. But so this upcoming week is weird for them. You don't like I don't know ever see consecutive off days for a baseball team, but the
Yeah,
Cardinals
both
are off on
Missouri teams.
Wednesday and yeah. So you were talking to I saw you were tweeting Jeff Jones, the
Uh-huh.
Belleville News Democrat Cardinals beat writer about it. What was the explanation there? I kind of forget.
So they were originally scheduled to have tomorrow off, but
Memorial
the
Day, yeah.
Cardinals wanted the gate receipts from the holiday because knowing that they're easily going to get, I mean, they're probably going to get 40,000 plus anyway, but
Sure.
it's a guarantee with the holiday. And apparently, I didn't even know you could do this, but they asked for the Royals' approval, which they received, and MLB's approval, and they got the game changed to Monday from Thursday. So now they have a win because it's one of those weird 2-game series. They were already supposed to be off Wednesday, which is kind of bizarre in and of itself. And now they have Wednesday and Thursday off, like back-to-back off days is weird. I mean, the Cardinals, I don't know what the Royal schedule has been like lately, but Cardinals, I think, will have played 19 games in 19 days prior to that those 2 games off. So probably could use that little break.
There was some kind of like trade, like the Royals also turned it around for the series out there
That's
against the
right. In like
Cardinals, like in
September or
August or
something.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's
Late in
like
the year.
another run where they're off on like a Saturday or something weird like that.
Yeah, the balanced schedules kind of throws things off a little bit. We're probably going to run into maybe a few more of these instances.
Dude, Goldschmidt homer.
Yeah, home run derby for the Cardinals all of a sudden.
Wow. Yeah, but so this weird like 2 consecutive days off in the middle of the week, that's going to allow Steven Matz to be pushed into the bullpen, thankfully, at least temporarily, and maybe it becomes a regular thing. He's just been flat out awful. Like can't throw his curveball effectively. 0-6 with a 5.72 ERA through 10 starts. I'd say he's actually pitched worse than that ERA suggests. Like it's been more like 6-7 range from my eye test. A 1.75 whip. He's throwing batting practice when he does command it, and like it's just not good. On the bright side, Matthew Liberatore gets a more permanent, more normal, settled in rotation spot. They've handled him
Hopefully.
kind of oddly. Like and this whole season's been odd for the Cardinals, as you well know, Ryan. But I've been very impressed with Liberatore. That last start Friday in Cleveland got away from him at the end. Was he charged with like 4 earned runs in the 5th inning? But he had been kind of cruising before then.
Mm-hmm.
A 3.13 ERA with 56 strikeouts in 46 innings this season at AAA Memphis prior to his call up. They've like he was used in relief against the Dodgers weirdly, and then they put him back in the bullpen one night earlier this week in case they needed him. Whatever. I think he's got a locked in rotation spot right now, and I think he's someone you want to be rostering and just plugging into fantasy lineups every time out until he proves unworthy of that, or until maybe the Cardinals do something weird with him again. Gets the Pirates at Pittsburgh next time out. They've come back to reality. I think you definitely pick him up for that matchup and then let it ride. I mean, the Cardinals need him. Like, stop toying with the kid with these weird like bullpen tries. We're not going to make this a Cardinals podcast, Ryan. I'm not venting today on a beautiful Sunday in St. Louis. It's one of the last nice days we might have for a while before this humidity sets in. So we're going to try to enjoy it. We're going to stay optimistic.
Yeah, I'm optimistic too about how they're going to handle it. What gives me a little bit of pause is they've kind of all they really said was Matz is going to be available in the bullpen for a couple of days. And because of this weird schedule this week, like it's possible that Liberatore could be available out of the bullpen too. They didn't say that specifically. But they could technically get away with, I guess, like 3 starters for a little bit, right?
Yeah, they could.
So I don't know how they're going to handle it exactly, but I mean, I don't know what else they need to see. I'm with you that Liberatore. I know the final line wasn't great, but I was still fairly encouraged with how he pitched his last time out, and he didn't really have his best pitch either. It was his curveball, and he kind of leaned more on the fastball and also the slider as well, which he doesn't use a ton, but that he threw some really good sliders in that start too. So I thought that was pretty encouraging. A couple of 90-mile-an-hour like back foot sliders, kind of prime Chris Sale-esque. Busted those out a couple times, but yeah, I mean Matt's pitched in the bullpen at the end of last year and actually did pretty well. So his splits suggest that he could handle lefties in such a role. So I don't know.
He's like just a 2-pitch pitcher now. Like you kind of have to.
Yeah, I mean, just to salvage, what they have left of that contract. If the Cardinals' rotation situation were different, Matt's, I'm sure, probably would have lost his spot a little while ago. But we'll see if they ultimately make that move. One rotation move that was made in Arizona. Brandon Pfaadt, not great for the Diamondbacks. Drew a lot of buzz from myself and Drew included, pretty sure, and everyone across the fantasy industry pretty much. Just didn't look great. He the strikeout rate, which was robust in the minors, he really wasn't missing many bats. He was giving up a bunch of home runs, which, not to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, but we did say that home runs could be an issue for him, and they were at the major league level. Like, he doesn't have like a overpowering fastball, and he's a fly ball pitcher. Like those guys, if they don't have the pristine command that day, it could go sideways quickly, and that's what it went with him. That's the way it went with him. I mean, they mentioned they're gonna work on things that they noticed. Like mechanically with him. I know one guy mentioned that maybe it was Brent Strom went on the record saying something about how he thought he could be better with his finger placement on one of his pitches. I don't remember exactly what it was, but obviously he has some things to work on before you can be trusted in fantasy again. Zach Davies is up to go back into the rotation. There's no appeal there, I don't think. Brandon Pfaadt, I think, is an easy drop in redrafts. And Drew, I'm still holding out a good amount of hope for for Dynasty, but it's fine to cut him loose and redraft.
I like to, I guess, usually be like, I don't know, open and honest and like check my biases. And with Pfaadt, like you just looked at the minor league. That's all I really looked at was the minor league numbers and like some YouTube clips. And I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
and you just like kind of build that into it's going to translate to the major league level. When I like have watched him pitch at the major league level, I don't really like actually see as dominant of a starter
Yeah.
as the minor league numbers would suggest. Maybe like, I'm not a scout and like maybe he's right. He just like needs to figure a couple things out, but he doesn't like come off as like a Grayson Rodriguez. Like when you watch Grayson Rodriguez, even though he got demoted and struggled, like you see why he's a top pitching prospect. I didn't see it as much with Pfaadt.
Yeah, he's a guy who I think the fantasy industry was more excited than like the scouting industry. Like he's I don't know. I don't want to say like kind of a little smoke and mirrorsy, but maybe there is a little bit of that to a degree. Like he just had like a supreme strike thrower and kind of got by with deception, I think, at the minor league level, and you can get by with that at the major league level to a certain degree too. And like I said, I'm still fairly bullish on him over the long haul.
Right.
Yeah, but
yeah, same.
Certainly in redraft, just go ahead and cut him loose.
I would agree with you on that. Some other pitching news: Michael Soroka, it's Michael now, not Mike. Is about ready to make his triumphant return to Major League Baseball. Looks like Monday at Oakland. It'll be his first Major League start since August 2020.
Juicy matchup.
Had the Achilles. Oh heck yeah! Against, I think what Chris likes to call him, the AA Midland Athletics or something like that. And then makes the argument that Midland might actually have a more talented roster. But Soroka, suffered that Achilles tear and then had a bunch of complications with that. I've lost track of all the injuries, to be honest. Lots of lower body stuff.
Twice, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Retore it, or like the first surgery just like didn't work. And then he had a hamstring issue this spring. There's been some other stuff. I don't know, like over the last 3 years, there's just been a lot of stuff. Atlanta's brought him along slowly, carefully this year. It's nice that they can afford to do that with the riches they have on the pitching side and the position player side, kind of the model organization of baseball right now. But yeah, Soroka had that one really bad start at AAA Gwinnett in late April, around the time that it first like looked like he was pushing towards getting a call. But otherwise, like pretty solid numbers on the farm, especially his last turn Tuesday against AAA Durham, the AAA affiliate of the Rays. 8 strikeouts, over 6 innings of 1-run ball. He was one of the brightest young pitchers in the sport when he first arrived in the majors. I think he was 20 years old when he first showed up. Returns now at age 25, going on 26. Returns to a career 2.86 ERA through 214 major league innings. I don't know how to evaluate him properly if I'm being real. Like I almost want to look at it like he's a different pitcher because there's been such a gap and he's, I'm sure, had to rework some things. But I mean, certainly if he does get the A's in this first turn, I'm firing the bullet in fantasy as a definite must add and just kind of rolling from there. Atlanta has options for that rotation spot if he does not look good. So that there's some concern there if you're like considering spending like big FAAB dollars on him. I would be more cautious about that. But because he was not on the injured list, he was just optioned at Gwinnett. So, he's going to be out there on waivers in certain leagues, maybe even still. I don't know. What's your level of excitement with Soroka? It's a tough situation to like gauge with like any confidence, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. Like I think he's more as highly thought of as a pitching prospect as he was. He's always been kind of more floor over ceiling. Like he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. He could be one of those guys, I think, who maybe kind of figures that part out. But I kind of think more like prime, like Kyle Hendricks type pitcher, which is pretty great. He could strike out like maybe a batter per inning at his peak, but I think probably it's more of you're hoping to get the ratios from him more than anything else. But yeah, it's because he's missed so much time. Tough to gauge exactly what we're going to get out of him. But the reports have been solid. He's going to have a great offense backing him. Also, as good of a matchup as you can possibly have your first time out. The Braves do have options, but they also Max Fried and Kyle Wright are going to be out at least another 6 weeks or so, probably more. And who the two is? I think
Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster haven't looked like awesome.
Yeah, they've been kind of up and down. But yeah, I don't know. I'm with you. I don't think you can go too crazy from a FAAB perspective, but when so many fantasy teams are looking for reliable pitching, even if his ceiling is not, Tyler Glasnow-esque, I think he could give you some pretty good ratios, and for that alone, I think he's certainly worth a flyer.
Schuster has looked better lately. I shouldn't lump him in with Dodd as much.
Yeah.
A quick note also on Vince Velasquez, who as well, before we'll move into our 3 up, 3 down from Saturday. He returned from the injured list to the Pirates rotation on Saturday after a bout of elbow inflammation, but made it just 2 innings before the elbow began barking again. I think we can kind of guess what's going on here, that it was a more serious injury for Velasquez than the original diagnosis of inflammation, which first put him on the shelf in early May. I was watching that start. I was working a news shift for RotoWire and just had it on, and he grabbed at his elbow after a pitch. We've witnessed that scene before, and it just usually doesn't end up well when something happens on a pitch. I think we're looking at a lengthy absence here to where you just probably drop Velasquez. He'd been a nice find for Pittsburgh. He had that scoreless innings streak that I think ran up to around 19 straight scoreless innings, maybe even 20. But the overall picture here, the track record, the continued elbow issues, I think you cut bait and save that IL spot for someone else in a standard type fantasy league.
Yeah, I remember the Pirates kind of got made fun of because when they made the Velasquez signing, they sent out a hype video.
Oh no!
People were kind of making fun of them for that, but he actually was pitching pretty well for them. But yeah, even if it's does wind up being elbow inflammation again, there's no reason to wait this out. You could just jettison him to the waiver wire.
That covers most of the big weekend storylines. We'll do our 3 up, 3 down, talk some waiver wire targets. But first, a quick commercial break. A new MLB season means it's time for a new kind of daily fantasy baseball. Rival Fantasy is the fantasy platform reinventing the way daily and weekly games are played. And they've brought new games to the ballpark this year that fantasy players won't find anywhere else. Rival Fantasy's games include Fantasy Bingo, head-to-head player challenges, and Fantasy Book, where users can select over-unders for 2 to 5 players. With games like this, daily fantasy has never been better. Right now, RotoWire listeners can get a $50 protected first play. That means if you win your first play, you keep your winnings. But if you lose your first entry, Rival Fantasy will fully refund you up to $50. Go to play.rivalfantasy.com/signup and use code RotoWire MLB at signup. Deposit a minimum of $25 to get your first entry on Rival protected up to $50. Now's the time to step up to the plate and become a Rival today. Welcome to the arena. All right, 3 up from Saturday. You take it first. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Luis Severino. 2 starts back from a lat injury. He's looked great in both of them. Went 6 1/3, I believe, which 1 earned run against the Padres his last time out. He only got 5 strikeouts, 4 strikeouts, and really only a really low number of swinging strikes. I think it was 6 and 82 pitches. So you'd like to see that number higher, but he also hit exactly 100.0 miles per hour on the radar gun. I mean, that's certainly encouraging. And we know with, I hate to keep going back to kind of Glasnow-esque, but like Luis Severino is really good when he's healthy. 2 years in a row, he's dealt with a lat issue. That's kind of worrisome, but he was he was kind of getting onto the Yankees both times. He felt like he was being kind of babied a little bit, like he didn't think he needed to go on the 60-day IL last year and didn't think he needed to this year either. But regardless, he's healthy now, looking good. I think he will get those strikeouts up. I think you can count on him for more than a strikeout per inning. What the workload will be, whether he'll be able to stay healthy, that's a question. He is an impending free agent for whatever that's worth. I don't know if that
on a very light starting pitching market.
Yeah, he could, and he's going to be. What is he? He's still in his 20s, isn't he? I think he's.
Don't make me guess on his age. I can look it up real quick.
I was gonna
29.
Say. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 29. We'll see what he
could get a nice contract. I mean,
yeah.
Considering like what's out there and every team that needs rotation help.
Yeah, at the very least, I mean, he feels like a guy who could get a really high AAV, maybe not super long year-wise, but yeah, Severino is certainly a guy who I can't imagine that he's out there in any league, but he's looked as good as I think as we could hope for his first 2 starts back. So if he is out there, pick him up. There's your hard-hitting analysis.
And up for me is Edouard Julien, who might be out there on some waiver wires.
Yeah.
Had a big day at the plate in the Twins' 9-7 win over the Blue Jays on Saturday. 3 for 5, a homer, 2 doubles, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. Julien showed some promising flashes during his first call up with Minnesota, in April, and is back now in what looks to be an everyday role or fairly close to it at second base with Jorge Polanco still recovering from his hamstring strain. That's kind of been a lingering thing for Polanco. He's also had some knee trouble. Julien can play the outfield as well and at third base, cycling at DH too. He's already done that at the big league level, getting some looks out of the DH spot for the Twins. And I mean, the offensive numbers suggest that this is a dude you want to be rostering. I think in all relevant standard fantasy formats. If the Twins are going to keep playing him and I think they should. Again, I had a huge showing in the 2022 Arizona Fall League, a 924 OPS this year at AAA, 864 OPS through his first 15 major league games. Last year between single A and double A, he batted 300 with a 441 on base percentage, 17 homers, 19 steals. It's that pop and speed combo that we're all looking for in a fantasy player. And given how shallow second base can be, to me, he's just a really attractive must-play option at the moment. And maybe over the long term, even when Polanco returns, if Julien keeps hitting, he has that versatility where I think they can find a spot for him. I would think he's not going to get sent back down again, barring a sudden cold streak right around the time that Polanco's ready. But I know this has been a really quick ascent for Julien. He was an 18th round pick. I don't believe he's ever appeared on a preseason top 100 prospects list, but you look at and I don't know, maybe I'm I said it before with Brandon Pfaadt. Sometimes I'll just look at minor league numbers and
scouting to the stat line.
Yeah. I mean, I do that. We all do that.
Yeah.
But everything tells you that this is an actual good player who belongs right now in an everyday role at the major league level.
Yeah, he's kind of that 3 true outcomes guy. He strikes out a decent amount, but draws just a ton of walks. Yeah. And he has power, opposite field power too. I think all of his home runs have been to the opposite field, and that's a thing he showed, consistently in the minors as well. He doesn't really have a position. He can play those positions you mentioned, third, second, dabbled in the outfield, but he's really his position is batter's box. it would help if the Twins would show a willingness to use Byron Buxton in the outfield.
Yeah, no. Yep.
But I mean, you can't really argue with what they've gotten out of Buxton. He's pretty much stayed healthy and been pretty productive. So I don't know when that's gonna.
That is a roster with a lot of guys. Sorry, yeah, it is a roster with like a lot of guys without you got Joey Gallo there.
Yeah.
A ton of like outfield, like I don't know, Alex Kirilloff, Trevor Larnach, like just.
And a guy who we are going to talk about later too is Royce Lewis,
yeah,
on the way as well, and he's got a better glove than Julian. So I don't know. If you told me he was going to get regular playing time rest of the season, I would say he'll retain mixed league viability. I'm not positive we're going to see that, but the Twins offense has been a little up and down. I think he could continue to hit if he is given those opportunities. We'll see how much longer Polanco's going to be out. Carlos Correa too is back in the lineup, but he's been dealing with
we talked about that yesterday.
Heel issue.
Yeah, he's got plantar fasciitis and a muscle strain in the arch of that same foot, like unrelated. The plantar fasciitis is in his heel. And yeah, he returned to the lineup Friday. Chris and I did kind of a deep dive on this, but I think he's going to need like more days off.
Yeah.
So
you can manage
plantar fasciitis. Yeah.
Lewis might wind up playing more shortstop. We'll see. So there is the potential for Edouard Julien to stick in that lineup. I am optimistic if he does, he'll be productive, but still kind of TBD. They got some moving pieces there in Minnesota. Another guy up from Saturday for me, Zach Wheeler. He's been beginning of the season. He was kind of uncharacteristically wild, but like the last month or so, looking like the Zach Wheeler of old. He hasn't walked more than one guy, I think, in any of his last 6 starts, including yesterday against the Braves. Struck out 12, I believe, batters over 8 innings, only give up 3 hits. Just a great outing from him. And I think it was you and I last week who covered it with Aaron Nola. Like, Phillies pitchers had a big workload last year, like not only in terms of innings, but they also pitched late into the year. So it's not terribly surprising that Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler didn't have kind of their typical starts, but they're both kind of now figuring out, Wheeler especially. So I think those that invested, where Wheeler was going ADP wise in spring, that investment's going to start paying off now.
It gets the Nationals next too, if the Phillies stay on their current schedule. So that would be on Friday. 3 down from Saturday. Justin Verlander, I'll start it off with, had a rough go of it Saturday at Coors Field, as many a great and lesser pitcher than Verlander has experienced before. I was wondering how often Verlander had pitched in that environment there in Denver with the thin air and the spacious outfield, being an American League guy for the first 17 years of his career. All before the balanced schedule, obviously. Only 2 times previously. Saturday was his 3rd ever appearance there. And he actually fared pretty well in his first 2 outings at Coors earlier in his career, but yeah, not so good yesterday. 6 earned runs on 9 hits and a walk over 5 innings, only 2 strikeouts. I don't know that this performance needs like a real deep dive. He was excellent against the Guardians at home in Citi Field last weekend. 8 innings of 1-run ball, 5 strikeouts in that one. The strikeout rate is down this year since he came off the IL. Maybe that's something worth examining as he rolls along. But only 5 starts of data so far with the Mets. He missed the first 5 weeks of the season with a teres major muscle strain. I think he could still be a fantasy ace and an ace for the Mets, even at age 40. He gets the Blue Jays next. That'll be a test, but thankfully doesn't have to go back to Coors Field for the foreseeable future. The command has been great. Like the fastball readings are fine to very good. The breaking ball spin rates are all like at the levels that you'd want to see it. I think it all points to him being at least like pretty close to the same dude. Maybe not. I mean, he was amazing last year. He won the AL Cy Young Award.
Yeah.
And he's not getting any younger, but I don't know. I'm willing to do another evaluation on where Verlander is once there's kind of a larger sample size of stuff to parse through. And I'm not going to worry about one bad start at Coors Field. Unless I had him in fantasy, which, you take it on the chin.
Yeah, I think it is worth pointing out, like his swinging strike rate is down below 10% this year, which is, I mean, not only not Verlander-esque, it's not even like
right
average pitcher-esque. And it was down actually last year too, even though he's just had a sub-2 ERA. So, I mean, I think it's probably fair to think his stuff is just overall just ticked down a little bit. But there's also the element of, I know it's not the most highbrow fantasy analysis, like he's Justin Verlander, and I trust him to figure it out. So, I mean, I think he's ultimately going to be, well, maybe his ceiling isn't quite at the peak Verlander.
Yeah, he's not a 300 strikeout guy anymore. That's okay.
Yeah, but I think especially from a ratios perspective, he's still going to be elite. Another guy down from not necessarily just Saturday, but Taylor Ward might have lost his starting job to Mickey Moniak. I believe 4 out of the last 6 games, Ward has been. I apologize, I did not check yet Sunday. I'm not sure if he's playing or not. So through Saturday, 4 of the last 6 games, Ward has been on the bench. And both of the times he played was against a lefty. So each of the last.
Guess who's in right field and batting leadoff today? Moniak.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so he's in right field today. Is Ward in left?
Yeah.
Okay. So Hunter Ward or Hunter Renfroe
Ward
is getting a day off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ward's in left, batting 8th.
Oh, down in the 8th spot. Yeah. So not a great sign. I mean, going through Saturday, it sat 4 straight games against righties. I don't know. I kind of think I kind of still have more trust in Taylor Ward than I do Mickey Moniak. I mean, Moniak's been great, but even with the great bottom line production, like he's striking out like an almost 40% rate and walking at like a 2% rate. Like and I know everybody sees that 1-1 next to his name is in like first round draft pick, first overall, but Moniak was always like a money saving pick. Everybody knew it. Like he's never performed or from a stat line perspective or a scouting perspective like a former number 1 overall pick. I mean, he has been really productive at the AAA level the last couple of years, but he's also like this year was like his 3rd full year at AAA. So, I mean, he should be dominating that league at this point. And, Ward doesn't have the kind of track record where we should just trust him totally either. But I still think he's ultimately probably a better bet than Moniak rest of season. But certainly Phil Nevin is playing the hot hand here. So I don't think Ward has the kind of upside, especially when he's not batting in the top half of that lineup. That's a very top-heavy lineup that the Angels have. He's not a guy that you need to wait around on. But if you were asking me rest of season who's going to be more productive out of those 2 guys, I'm still going to say Ward. But even in 5 outfielder leagues, I don't think he necessarily needs to be a hold.
Yeah, that 3-month stretch that Ward had last year, I think I'd say pretty confidently that's going to go down as a career outlier.
He was like awesome in April last year, and then like the worst hitter in baseball for 2 months, and then one of the best hitters again for 3 months. Like it was kind of crazy.
It was a weird one. Yeah. It was like a little bit patchwork. I talked about the Twins win over the Blue Jays 9-7 win on Saturday. Chris Bassett was what is the opposite of being a beneficiary? He was not good in that one. 7 earned runs over just 4 innings. It jumped his season ERA from 3.03 to 3.80. He had a bad start in his previous turn as well. 6 runs, only 2 of them earned though, in a loss to the Rays. Got roughed up badly in his season debut back on April 2nd against the Cardinals, back when the Cardinals were a little bit of an easier team to root for the first series of the year. Otherwise, though, I don't know. Bassett's been like very good to dominant, at least like very near to what you would expect him to be when you drafted him. Average draft position in like the 140 range this spring, about the 37th starting pitcher off the board. There's been sort of this downward trend with Bassett, maybe just kind of a typical decline as he moves into his mid 30s, which I feel deeply, being 36 and washed up. But he'll be fine. Gives you the ERA help and some strikeouts and some wins potential on that really good Blue Jays team. I guess you look at the walk rate; it stands out that it's been a lot worse this year. I'm not super concerned yet. I think the overall outlook is still that he can be that top 40 fantasy starter that you expected him to be. I think he'll be that the rest of the way. Pitching at the Mets next, who was his former team from last year. So a little revenge game narrative as he looks to bounce back, and I think certainly could.
Yeah, I think the key word there is you mentioned that he's probably going to be fine, and that's what he'll be. He'll be fine. Like,
yeah, fine.
He's not going to be the guy who had like you mentioned he was really bad his first start, and then he went like a month, 5-ish week stretch where he was awesome. But the underlying numbers, like the expected ERA, even after this kind of little blip he's had recently, like his xERA is like near 5. Like he hasn't pitched as well as his bottom line results have been, but I think I agree he's going to be fine. Probably not going to get you a strikeout per inning, maybe a little close to it, but
not a top 25 fantasy starter, but he's top
right.
20.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be fine. A guy who I do think has a little more upside, we're going hitter here. We move into our FAAB and waiver target.
Yeah, let's get into some waiver wire target
here. Guy we mentioned before, Royce Lewis, I think is eligible. What day is today? The 28th.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's eligible for activation tomorrow. I don't know if the plan is to bring him back immediately. If it's not tomorrow, it's going to be certainly going to be soon. I mean, he's looked awesome on his rehab assignment, coming back from the second time he's torn the same ACL in his not sure which knee it is, but it's the same one he's torn twice. But like 10 rehab games, he has like 4 home runs and 4 stolen bases. He's just looked great for the Twins last year as well before getting hurt. Got hurt playing the outfield, which was not his regular position. He's going to stick to the infield now. I think he's exclusively played shortstop and third base on his rehab assignment. I think could play second base too if that's a potential avenue for him. But they have Julian up now and hopefully Polanco on his way back at some point. I think third base is probably ultimately where he's going to fit in. Kyle Farmer has been pretty productive, but
yeah,
he's still Kyle Farmer, perfectly fine guy to have around, but I don't think he's going to be a roadblock for Royce Lewis. So I mean, I like the Royce Lewis, another, by the way, 1-1 round 1, pick 1 overall guy, and he is a talent I think worthy of that lofty draft status. So could still be out there in your league, and if he is, I think he's definitely worth scooping up.
I'm just watching Jordan Hicks here in a high leverage situation.
What could go wrong?
I'm scared. Exactly. I talked about Michael Kopech finding something earlier for the White Sox to help settle their season. And yeah, man, if he's still out there on the waiver wire, like I know he was a popular drop after a tough April, but I would definitely go get him again. So far in May, a 1.99 ERA with 33 strikeouts and 31 and 2/3 innings. Racked up 10 strikeouts over 8 scoreless innings on May 19th against the Royals, 9 strikeouts and 7 scoreless this past Wednesday at Cleveland. Those are obviously two favorable matchups, Kansas City and Cleveland, offenses that don't usually frighten you like this Jordan Hicks high leverage situation is frightening me. But Kopech's control has just been so much better lately. There probably still will be inconsistency with that. Kopech is like prone to a blow up here and there if the walks start piling up in his outing. But a 2-start week coming up against the Angels and Tigers, I think he's pretty much at the top of the board for me as like a starting pitcher pickup. If he's available, grab him for this week, this upcoming
Yeah,
week.
and I would agree. And like I was pretty much out on him. Like he was just dating back to last year. Like the control has just been so bad. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. Kind of had a lingering knee issue for a while. Of course, he had Tommy John back a while ago. I still think I'm still skeptical, like over the long haul with him, but he's clearly found something. I mean, he's throwing really hard, consistently hitting the upper 90s with his fastball. Got a whole bunch of swings and misses with the fastball. His last start. And I mean, I think you can take that one of two ways. Like you can, if you're a guy, because normally you're going to get more swings and misses with your off-speed stuff. That's just how your breaking stuff. It's just how it works. But if you're able to,
yeah.
I was just going to say, if you're able to blow hitters away with that fastball, it's a good sign. But also, like, how much is it reliable over the long haul? I don't know. I worry about the control with him more than anything else. But certainly with that favorable 2-start matchup, like he's at the very least for me has gone from a guy who I really had no interest in to someone who you have to pick him up now just to see what happens. Another guy.
I think like Kopech, the times that I've seen him dominant, I feel like it's been a day game. And I know you can look this up on Baseball Reference, but I'm having to scroll through his splits. I wonder if there's something to that.
Something
anyway,
about getting up early.
Or maybe like something about just the deception of his pitches. Like, like he just looks a little bit more hittable when the lights are on it.
Maybe
it's not high level analysis.
Another guy who was certainly droppable earlier this season. Had a lot of buzz coming into the year because of how he closed last year is Jake McCarthy. He just got off to a dreadful start, eventually found himself back at AAA Reno. But as hitters typically do at AAA Reno, they are able to get back on track there. It's basically like hitting on the moon. So it was awesome at AAA Reno, and now he's back in the majors. I haven't seen if he's in the lineup today, but I know he started the first 2 games back, and one of them was against a lefty. So was in the 8th spot in the lineup. Not really surprising that they're going to ease him back in there. But, Dominic Fletcher has come back to earth. He not really a guy I don't think that they necessarily committed to giving regular playing time to. Pavin Smith has not been great lately as well. Like that, there's a clear path to regular.
They optioned Fletcher, right?
Did they option him?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I missed that. There we go. So yeah, I mean, I think, and Alec Thomas is out of the picture now as well. He also disappointed is back now at AAA Reno. So it's going to be Gurriel and Corbin Carroll and Jake McCarthy in that outfield for a while, I think. And I think it was some skepticism was deserved for McCarthy and how awesome he was last year, especially from a power perspective. Like, I think people expected the steals, but were skeptical of the power, at least should have been. But now you can you can be the beneficiary of, especially if you didn't draft the guy. It's really not. I think it was Vlad Sedler pointed out Roto Gut, the handle on Twitter, pointed out that it's like one of the most satisfying things in fantasy is when someone else uses a high round pick on a guy, they flop, they drop them, and then you pick them up and reap all the benefits when they bounce back. So that's
I've been on both ends of that.
Yeah, me too. But that's potentially what could happen with McCarthy. I mean, I think especially from a stolen base perspective, I think he's going to be viable rest of the season. He's got some sneaky pop too, so I think he could especially in a roto league, be a force.
This kind of anecdotally. I feel like McCarthy's average draft position whenever I did a draft this spring was like all over the place because there were people that loved him as like, he showed signs that he could be like a breakout candidate. The people that loved him like went up and reached for him in drafts. And, I liked him when I could get him a little bit later. Because I was like, I have some reasons for skepticism, but I really like the overall picture here. And I don't know. Yeah, now that he's back in a regular role, like after a little bit of reset at Reno, I agree. It's like a great place to just go and reset. I think he's going to be very productive in fantasy. Nolan Jones is someone I was kind of hyped on this spring as like a deep league late round flyer, former top prospect with the Guardians, and like bringing a sense of post-hype breakout potential with him out with the Rockies to Coors Field. He didn't wind up making the opening day roster. Like they signed Mike Moustakas instead or something. Just the Rockies doing Rockies things. Yeah. And we're dogging on Moustakas a lot on this show. Sorry, Mike. But Jones, he had like a brief call up in mid-April. He was up for 4 days. He didn't get into a game. Like during that 4-day stretch again, just the Rockies doing Rockies things. But he's back now. Michael Tolia was optioned to AAA Albuquerque. Brenton Doyle suffered that knee contusion earlier this week. He hasn't been put on the IL, but that was a scary scene. He had to be carted off the
field.
He
is back in the lineup today.
Oh, is he? Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. But I know Jones can get starts at first base. There's an opening there. CJ Cron's still out. You can get starts in the outfield. He played third base, even some shortstop in the minors. I doubt they'd play him at short, but he has like the defensive versatility, at least in the fact that he's like played a lot of these positions, and has the offensive upside, that I think he should be an everyday guy for the Rockies. Like, why not? Absolutely insane numbers this year at Albuquerque, which is a bit like Reno, like hitting on the moon. But you just look at the stat line: 356 batting average, 1193 OPS, 12 homers, 42 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 38 runs scored in 39 games. I mean, that's never going to translate to the major league level. But anything close with the Coors Field boost, if Nolan Jones is playing every day, and I think he should, I just really love the potential for fantasy help in a lot of categories. I'm not saying he's a superstar. I don't see the speed being like a huge factor for him either. But at least he's a non-zero there, and like, batting average, he'll run into some homers, RBIs, runs scored. I'm a fan. I think he's like just a really good real life player that the Rockies finally found something.
Dude, you know what I just realized what the Rockies are going to do? Now that he's available, they're going to sign Eric Hosmer and send Nolan Jones down. Wouldn't that be such a Rockies? I mean, CJ Cron is still hurt.
We predicted the Jurickson Profar thing.
That's right. You did predict the Profar thing. But wouldn't that be such a Rockies thing? Like bringing in Eric Hosmer? Oh gosh. I just willed that into existence. I worry. But I mean,
and then he's gonna have like a great couple of weeks too.
Yeah, they're gonna trade him at the deadline. But no, I'm with you on Jones. He's intriguing. Strikeouts can be a problem, but he draws his fair share of walks. The raw power has always been there. Like, he's never been a guy, aside from this year when playing at Albuquerque, to hit for like a ton of home runs, but like the scouting reports say it's been there, and obviously he's in the venue to take advantage of that, and also has the ability to play multiple positions. So
Yeah, I guess I
we
should.
can
I
never,
know he's made 2 starts at first base since his call, but I should look at their lineup today.
yeah, we can never trust the Rockies not to Rocky, but like hopefully, I mean, they really should give probably Elihuris Montero another look too. I know he's been crushing the ball at AAA as well, but yeah, I'd like to
Jones
see
is
what
at
Nolan Jones
first base again. Yeah, 3 straight
good,
starts at third or first base. I mean,
good. Yeah, at the very least, that he should be playing against righties. So I think in a 5 outfielder league, he's someone that you should be looking to add.
all right, we'll get you out of here to enjoy the last good day of weather we're gonna have in St. Louis until mid-September. Are you ready for this, man? I hate the heat and humidity. Just as like a
Humid,
larger person who sweats a lot, it's
yeah,
just it's brutal.
yeah.
I
You
can't,
step outside and it feels like you're like immediate, like someone's
in
like
an
blowing a
oven.
hair dryer on you, like nonstop. Like it's
Yeah.
just, oh yeah,
And I've been to even like Scottsdale in June. Um and it's obviously hot, but like I don't know, like at least you can like go in the shade there and get some like respite from it. Here, like the shade doesn't even help you. And when the sun goes down, it's still just we live in a swamp, man. Anyway, that'll
it's
be
very sticky. Yeah, enjoy your
it's
holiday,
sticky.
everybody.
Yeah, that'll be it for us. Thanks for tuning into the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast brought to you by Rival Fantasy. Go to rivalfantasy.com or download the app to begin playing a far better form of daily fantasy baseball. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Drew Silv. Ryan is at Ryan P. Boyer. Stay tuned for more episodes every day of the week. We'll see you next time.